Nuevamente en PS 360 tenemos a un gran invitado desde CIPE 2025 en México y con nosotros está Von Kliem y we are so honored to have you here in Mexico and CIPE 2025.
Well, thank you
Welcome.
for having me. I appreciate that.
How was your experience about teaching and networking here in CIPE?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I was really proud to be here. The audience was amazing. When we were teaching in English, there was some translation, but what amazed me was the type of questions that were being asked by the audience. They really understood the concepts. You could tell they were taking notes, that what we were saying seemed to be valuable to them, but they had really smart questions to come back. So I was really happy to see that. We weren't sure how that was going to work, but the program was amazing. The feedback from the students was outstanding. So I really appreciated getting to meet them.
And for our audience that were not present here, could you briefly explain what use of force science means to our listeners?
Sure. Yeah. So force science is not an individual science. It's a company, and we have a training division, we have a research division, and then we have a consulting division. I'm the chief consulting and communications officer, and I'm involved in most of our high profile police shootings and civilian shootings in the United States and internationally. What force science does is when we evaluate cases, we're looking for the decision making and the performance that went into the use of force. Unfortunately, what we learned was people standing in judgment of the police were forgetting that there was a human involved in the perception, the decision making, and ultimately the performance. And so what force science does is we look at our research and the research from many industries to make sure that when you evaluate a human involved in a threat assessment and then their response, that you remember that in the middle of a fight, in the middle of a critical incident, your body changes. The way you make decisions changes. And we want to make sure that the evaluation reflects those changes. You know, I can give you a quick example is in the middle of a fight, you're not going to hear everything. You're not going to see everything. You won't even feel everything. So later when people are standing in judgment of you, they think you should have heard something or they think you should have seen something. We just come in and make sure they remember that's not always possible. And the way we phrase that is your expectations can't be beyond human performance capabilities. And so that's really what force science is committed to. Our unique offer, as we call it, the thing we're very good at, is to look at the psychological, physiological, and environmental influences on decision making and performance.
And why understanding human performance under stress so vital in this situation?
Yeah, it's if we want to hold officers and civilians and protectors accountable, we want to make sure they explain why they did what they did. We want to make sure it's legal. We want to make sure it's within their training. And we want to make sure it's reasonable, that they did a good threat assessment and they did a response that will allow them to immediately and decisively stop that threat. Human performance that is introduced through force science make sure that that's honest accountability. And so understanding human performance is how we make sure that the expectations on that officer, on that protector, isn't beyond human performance capabilities. We saw for decades that police officers and bodyguards and protectors were having to go to court. And if they survived the gunfight, they found themselves then facing courtroom litigation or having to go to prison. And we think, okay, if they were unreasonable, that's okay. If they used excessive force, that's okay. But those people who are evaluating those critical incidents have to understand that their expectations can't be beyond what any human can do, or that's dishonest and corrupt accountability. So that's really the most critical part of understanding human performance during these critical incidents.
What common mistakes do investigators make when evaluating use of force events?
Yeah, that's a great question. They forget, well, two things. One, they forget there's a human involved,
Okay.
which I've spoken about. The other big one right now that we see a lot is they watch the video. A lot of these critical incidents have video footage, and we pretend that the video is the officer's experience.
Okay.
Now, I don't know if this will translate well, but we have a phrase that says you cannot use a camera and you cannot use a video as a proxy for the officer's experience.
Okay.
You can only use the officer's experience, and only they know what that is. The biggest mistake that's being made today is we watch a video and we think we know what the officer knew. We think we have all the information that the officer had, and then we use that to judge them. What we've been able to demonstrate through research is that there is nothing on that video that you can assume the officer or the protector was aware of, because you don't know where they were looking. You don't know what their focus of attention was. The video itself is limited because it's only two-dimensional representation of a three-dimensional experience. And so we're saying you can't use the video as a proxy for the officer's experience, but also remember that an officer is not witnessing the event. The protector is not witnessing the event, they're experiencing it. And so those are the critical things we have to remind the people after the fact. That's the biggest mistake they're making, is they're forgetting there's a human and they're pretending that the video tells them everything they need to know.
Okay. And is there any training for officers to change this?
Absolutely. So Force Science puts on training. We have a website. It's forcescience.com. And on that website, you'll see our basic fundamentals of human performance, right? It's we have a certification course. We have a advanced specialist course, which is like a 17-week course. All these courses are designed to help officers see the reality of critical incidents, see the limitations of human performance and the capabilities of human performance, to see the limitations of video and the capabilities of video. And in those courses, that you can see those courses, descriptions of them through the Force Science website. And I would encourage everybody who gets a chance to take advantage. We have those online, and we also have in-person options for that.
Thanks a lot. Um, how does your background as a police officer, attorney, and educator influence your approach?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I worked as a police officer. I was very, very involved in martial arts. I worked use of force cases. Then I became an attorney, and I was advising chiefs of police while I was continuing to train and continuing to work as an attorney. And then ultimately, I was at the policy level. What helped me about that is I was actually performing the job myself, and then I was evaluating people performing the job, and then I was looking at the policy and legal aspects, and then I was litigating. I was actually in court as the attorney, so that now when I look at a case, I can look at it as from the legal side, the physical skills side, the human performance side, and the litigation side, which is how do you present the case before court and in court. It lets me connect dots very fast. And so as the chief of the consulting division, as a chief consulting officer, when I say we're involved in the most high profile cases, it's because they need to be able to have somebody help them connect those dots very quickly and at very high stakes cases. And that's something we're able to do very quickly because we've been doing it for over 30 years now.
And in another case, how can civilians apply your research to stay safer or think more clearly when confronted unexpectedly?
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the things our research has done is manage expectations. We want you to have realistic expectations about violence. We want you to have realistic expectations about your response to violence. One of the things we really focus on is a concept called action versus reaction. And you might hear the idea that action always beats reaction, right? Um, that's not literally true, because my fast reaction might beat your slow action. But what we want to demonstrate is, one of the best examples is Sometimes if you already have your gun out already, you're already pointing your gun at somebody, and their hand is hidden, they can actually point and aim and fire their gun faster than you can pull the trigger, because your response time requires you to recognize that they're doing something, recognize that it's dangerous, make a decision, and then actually perform that decision. And all of that takes time. And so there's not a universal response time, but what is universal is that you will always start that process after they have started theirs, which means at best you're going to be trading bullets with somebody. So some of the most important things that civilians can understand through our training is to set realistic expectations on how fast someone can attack you and how much time it takes for you to respond. And once you understand that, then you start building tactics, avoidance tactics, early threat recognition tactics. You build that into everything you do in life, so that you can either avoid or buy yourself more time to respond.
How does empathy or trauma awareness factor into better use of force outcomes?
Yeah. So first of all, on the empathy side, it's to put yourself in the place of another. It's to understand the feelings of another. Empathy, the way we look at it from pre-attack or pre-violence indicators, is to understand that not everybody engaged in violence has the same motivation, has the same purpose for that violence. We understand when you empathize with somebody or attempt to understand their emotions, they might be in what we call an asocial personality. That's somebody who is engaged in violence with no hesitation, no regrets. Violence is the entire purpose of the pain, right? That's different than somebody who you understand is engaged in what might be instrumental violence. That means somebody who is, they have an outcome and they don't care if they hurt you or not. They want to they want to get to the other side of you. I want the money that's behind you and I will kill you to get it. That's instrumental violence. It's just, it's a tool
For being in the middle.
for being in the middle. And the other one is empathizing with people who are just pretending. They're pretending to want to engage in violence. And they might be engaged in posturing. They want to intimidate you with violence, but they don't actually want to engage in violence. The problem is when you read people with this empathy, the situational awareness, this combat empathy, it's just a guess. You don't know. You're just looking for information that helps you read this other person. The better you get at this empathetic, this operational empathy, it's going to affect your tactics. It's going to affect the reasonableness of whether you should engage in de-escalation or verbal persuasion, or if you need to initiate violence fast and suddenly. So the better you are at that, which comes with time, the more indicators and more information you'll have to avoid it in the first place, and you'll get better use of force outcomes. Understanding, I think, the trauma piece in terms of better use of force really goes into how you're training your people and motivating them, because violence, the reality of violence is it's not just going to have physical consequences. It can have emotional consequences and psychological consequences. And so understanding that on the front end, it builds into the avoidance, builds into, like, you don't want to fight everybody. Just not even the fact that you might lose, just winning and winning and winning with the use of violence is going to take a toll on you. And so understanding that early, is really a motivator to get people to do everything they can to avoid the violence, so that when they're in it, they've minimized the number of times they're in it, but they are also saving themselves from the consequences of the number of those fights. I'll wrap it up saying this, that we train people to use physical skills and violence to reduce the population of people who can kill us, right?
Okay.
We teach them to use communication skills and avoidance skills to reduce the population of people who want to try to kill us. But when you hear me say that, violence reduces the population of people who can kill us. Communication reduces the population of people who want to kill us. But if you hear that, there's still a population out there that you have to prepare for.
Could you give us, for the civilians, 3 tips for keep and being safe?
Yeah, well, we talk about awareness. Study pre-attack indicators. Study what your world normally looks like. We call that your baseline. What does normal look like? And then start to identify what we call anomalies. What's different about what's normal. And if those things are things that you would associate with pre-crime, like a robbery, or associate with pre-violence, then don't just recognize them. The first thing is to recognize it. The second thing is to change your behavior in a way that reduces that threat. And it might sound silly, but a lot of people, civilians, will recognize the threat and they'll say, I don't feel comfortable here. Something's wrong. But they don't
stay.
But they stay. They keep walking towards it. They get on the elevator. They see the people blocking them in their car. And instead of moving right now, they let the person come to their car door in a state of denial. Maybe he's not trying to kill me. Maybe he's not trying to rob me. And civilians work very hard to be polite. They work very hard to not be racist or to not prejudge somebody. When it comes to your survival and the survival of your family, you have to set aside the idea of being polite, and instead look at the other person and imagine, is what they're doing in our world polite? For example, I like, if you're a woman by yourself in a parking lot and you see a strange man coming to ask you what time it is, you should be very concerned, because most normal adult men know not to approach a single woman by herself in a parking lot without raising anxiety and creating fear. And so you need to interpret it in a way that is most dangerous to you so that you can do something to avoid that contact. And then learn tactics, learn basic avoidance tactics, putting barriers between you and somebody, having communication options with you all the time. So I would say, if I had to boil it down, those are the big ones: is learn to recognize the threat cues, visualize and plan what you're going to do if you actually see those threat cues. And then the hardest one is actually do those things.
Thanks a lot. Van, it has been a pleasure to have you here, and we hope we could see you in CIPE 2026.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Wonderful.
Thanks a lot.
All right.